Good enough is perfect.
Good enough is perfect.
To get something from good enough to perfect, it's like those 1% things that stress you out that only you'll notice, right? I'll get my girlfriend to edit, or not to edit, to listen to my stuff when I'm editing it. Because I'm on like the second hour of trying to clean this audio and I can hear the background noise and I'm like, this sounds so bad. Can you listen to this? And she'll be like, I don't hear I don't hear anything. You get in your own head and you like, so now I've just stopped worrying. Maybe there's some background noise. It's not the end of the world. Everyone like, no, I've never got a comment about all your there's a lot of background noise in your podcast. I think I've done a pretty good job being able to clean it up, but I think trying to make it absolutely perfect is just going to stress you out and many people aren't even going to care or even notice. So there's no point.
So true, man. And Jacob Kelly, welcome to the It's Not That Deep podcast, brother.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I've been waiting for this moment, so I'm stoked to finally be here.
Man, I've been waiting too. It's been a journey so far, and you're a big part of that for me. I just rewinding on this whole podcast experience right now. Like when I decided to get into it, you meet some interesting people. I met Hayden, and he's quite close with you. And he's like, oh, you got to talk to my buddy Jacob. I'm like, all right, cool. So we grab coffee and just sitting down and getting to meet you, talk to you, pick your brain about this whole space that I know nothing about. It gave me so much clarity and motivation just at that moment. And I'm still a noob in this game, but I'm sitting here with the pod god, man. You're a podcasting beast, host of My Social Life, which is over 50 episodes now, right?
Yeah, I think time of recording this right now, 73 is out.
73, bro. What the? You're a beast, man. That's nuts. And you just started it when?
I started it in, I think the first episode came out like July 30th, 2018.
That's what a journey that must have been, man. We'll definitely get into all that, but you're also a digital media coordinator. What would you call it?
Yeah, I guess, digital marketing coordinator. Like, there's so many different terms. Like,
yeah.
I probably say a different one every time my family asks me what I do. So, yeah.
For OSEG, Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group, which for those who don't know, handles the Red Blacks, 67s, and what's our soccer team called?
We had the Fury, but the Fury ended up folded. They left, and now there's a new team called Atletico Ottawa, and they're not owned by OSEG though. They're like, so they rent TD Place and they'll play their games there, but they're not owned by OSEG.
That's very interesting because I heard about that as well. Is it the same like Atletico, like the famous one, like out in Spain?
Yeah, Atletico Madrid. Yeah, so they bought the team in the Canadian Premier League, so it's like in their like farm system, I guess, somehow.
That's actually pretty hype, man. That shows some promise for like the sport of soccer coming to North America a bit more. Yeah, pretty sweet, man. But yeah, I mean, you have a very impressive resume. We could sit here talking about like all your accomplishments forever, but let's talk about podcasting, man. What got you into it? What was the first like aha moment where it's like, I'm going to start recording myself and putting it out to the world?
I don't know if it was an aha moment. I listened to podcasts for probably, I want to say, over a year before I started my own. And so that's kind of where the original idea came from, was I was listening to a lot of podcasts and I was like, oh, these are cool. And then eventually I'd always been trying to like work on my personal brand. I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time, but like I had a couple different YouTube channels that I started and stopped doing and all this stuff. And then eventually I was like, maybe I'll start a podcast because I was listening to a bunch. And then I asked for a bunch of gear and I got some gear for Christmas. But as I said, my podcast came out in July. So I got a bunch of gear for like Christmas 2017, sat on it for forever because I didn't know what my podcast was going to be about or anything like that. And I just thought about it and I did research and all this stuff. And then eventually I just committed. I found the idea of doing it about social media because a lot of people thought my podcast was going to be about sports just because of where I work.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested in social media. So I was like, I'll make my podcast about that. And kind of the original idea was I was still doing my YouTube channel at the time when I started. And I was like, well, I'll just interview people about how they grew their YouTube channels and I'll apply it to my YouTube channel and I'll blow up. Plus, I'm going to be interviewing these people with big followings. They're going to promote my podcast. My podcast is going to blow up in no time, which is super naive to think. Like, definitely have a year and a half later, I still haven't blown up. But yes, the original idea was just wanting to learn more about social media. And so I did it through the podcast.
That's such an incredible like insight on that because so many people will go into something like this thinking, oh, well, I'm only like 2 or 3 steps away. Like if they just share my post, I mean, naturally my podcast I'm gonna be the next Joe Rogan, right? So that's very interesting. It's funny you mentioned that. What was it about social media that really like interested you?
I don't really. That's kind of tough to nail down. I think it's just marketing's interesting to me. And I think it's just kind of where marketing is heading, right? Or marketing is. I think it's where everyone hangs out. Like you hang out on social media all the time. Everyone hangs out on their phone on social media. That's where people are most of the time. So I don't really know what it was. I think it was kind of infatuated as well with like influencers and that whole being a YouTuber. Like being a YouTuber is something I obviously wanted to be, but so I think it was kind of through and then through my job that my job's heavily involving social media. So it was kind of through a combination of really liking YouTubers and that whole influencer space, as well as my job involving social media, which is kind of how I came into really, really liking social, making my podcast about that.
Right. So what was your YouTube videos like? What were they about?
So I had a couple different ones. So way back, like I don't talk about this one too often. I want to start a gaming channel. I bought like a capture card and everything. I remember I recorded myself probably twice playing video games. Those have never been posted. I don't even know if those files exist anymore. One of them was like Grand Theft Auto. I like played. I was gonna do like a walkthrough of Grand Theft Auto. Didn't make it past like the first mission or whatever. And then the first time I started actually posting on YouTube was when I first moved back to Ottawa when I was 18. It was just a vlog channel. I watched a lot of guys. I watched Casey Neistat, Fun for Louie, Ben Brown, like all these vloggers at the time. So that was super interesting to me. So I started kind of vlogging, but like didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know anything about cameras, and they were like not that great. So I stopped doing that one. And then the second channel I started when I was 19 was called Jack Sports, which was just my initials in sports. And I don't know if you ever watched the YouTuber Philip DeFranco.
Yeah.
So he talks about like the news and stuff. And I remember him saying in one of his videos that like if you are looking for a channel on YouTube to watch and you can't find it, create that channel yourself.
Ooh.
And I was like, okay. And then whenever Phil would talk about sports, I was like, yo, this is sick. But then he didn't do it very often. And I was like, I wish there was just like a Philip DeFranco show just about sports.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll start it. I did it for like 15 episodes and kind of died off, and I didn't really enjoy it in the end. And then so I stopped doing that one. And then I got back into vlogging for a second time when I turned 20, did that for a little while. And then it was kind of, I was doing that one when I started the podcast. And then I just kind of fell in love with podcasting. And then that channel slowly died, and I've kind of done a little bit here and there with it from time to time. I'd like to reboot it eventually, but it's just trying to balance everything right now. So I've done a lot of vlogging with a little bit of sports news stuff mixed in there.
That's very interesting, man. YouTube is this big question mark for me. I don't get it. I'll consume it, obviously, but being on the producer side of it, it's just this overwhelming beast. And I'm proud that I at least have my presence on there, and I'm on there, but it's not my focus. And you mentioned a very interesting thing just right there. It's like balance. Like you're pulled a million different directions, especially as a content creator, especially in 2020 when you're seeing all these different mediums for you to post your content, to create content, to consume content and learn from people. And like you're almost like, aha, like he's doing that. It's almost like a shiny object syndrome. Like you'll see, it's like, oh, okay, well, TikTok, or oh, well, maybe I should have more IGTVs, or maybe I should do more vlogging, or this and that. And like I think what I've learned, like, and mind you, still a noob, don't know anything, is like understanding what lane you're in and almost trying to dominate that. I think, to me, it's good to be in different places, but I don't think you actually have to be everywhere. So, I mean, as much as the Gary V's and the people of the world say you got to be everywhere, you got to chop up, we also have regular jobs, and we don't have a team chopping things up for LinkedIn versus for TikTok versus for this, for that. Like, you do have to pick and choose your battles a little bit.
No, absolutely. And I think too, like I understand the Gary Vee thing, and I've been very big on the Gary Vee train for a while. But I think too, like to your point, there's also a certain thing with finding a platform and owning that one platform and really kind of trying to establish yourself on a single platform. Like you said, it's important to be everywhere and like have a presence for sure. But the way kind of Gary Vee looks at it, I read an article he posted a while ago. It's like the 80-20 rule.
Right.
So he'll invest 80% of his time into one platform and 20% experimenting on the rest and just playing around on them. So he has that presence, but he's focused on one platform primarily. Right. And I think my social strategy, if you can call that, is kind of wavered a little bit. I don't really have one right now, but I think when I do start being more consistent, I will focus more so on that 80% on one platform and 20% on the others.
Yeah.
Because I think just if you can really own one platform and establish yourself there, that's more effective than trying to grow on 6 platforms at the same time.
100%. So 73 episodes, you said, right?
73 posted, 77 recorded.
Okay. So let's talk about this journey a little bit. From your first podcast to now, like, what has been one of the biggest revelations?
What is the biggest revelation? That's tough. I think the most surprising thing to me, it's hard to nail it down to just one. I think one, how accessible some people are.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you look at some of these people and you're like, I'm never gonna get a chance to talk to them. Like they're too big to talk to me. I think another big revelation for me is just not trying to be perfect, just be good enough in terms of like my editing and stuff like that. And then another one, I think a big revelation for me early on, because I was super naive at the time when I started it, not necessarily a revelation at this point, but one person posting my podcast isn't going to blow it up, which I thought was going to be like, I interviewed someone like 14,000 followers at the time when I started. I was like, okay, so he has 14,000, he'll post it. Probably 3,000 people will listen to my podcast. Not even close. I think my first couple episodes got like 30 downloads.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Feel
So
that.
it's like, I think those are some of the biggest lessons that I've learned so far.
Yeah. That's very powerful because to me, I thought that too. It's like, okay, well, if I just find like a big name, they're going to ride with it. They're going to post it. They might give you a story. They might like, tell like
Yeah.
a couple people, like, hey, check this. To them, it's almost like more of a press thing. Like, I'm just doing this thing. They're not actually going to ride with it as much as some of the people who and this is like speaking from my experience, some of my most like downloaded or most loved podcasts were with people I'm genuinely just like friends with and just sit down and talk to, and they tell their friends to tell their friends to tell their friends, and that like network effect alone of just that, them wanting to share it with people, is so much more valuable than some person with a big name who's like, it's just another press event for them.
That's just it. And for their audience too, it's like their audience has seen them do podcasts and interviews and they put out their own content.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when it's someone that's never really put out content before, if it's someone that just uses Instagram to flex or whatever and just mess around, post photos with their boys and stuff, it's different when they do a podcast for the first time because no one's ever heard them in that context before. But if it's someone that has been in that context many times before, whether it's through their own content and being on other podcasts, it's nothing new for their followers. So it's not a crazy thing for them to check out. But when it's someone that's never done it before, everyone's like, oh, I want to hear what this guy has to say because I've never heard him in that context before.
That's very, very interesting, and I never thought about it that way. It's so true. It's like a lot of these, like a lot of people, guests who you get on your podcast, haven't really done it before, but people like peer through a lens when they're scrolling through, let's say Instagram or Twitter or something, and you get these bits, these little bites of what this person's about, and we like categorizing. We love putting people in a certain box, right? And you just kind of make an assumption about somebody. But as soon as you can get more context about that person, it just completely changes like how you view them, which blows my mind because like now they have like you planted a seed in them and they might go do more podcasts or even start their own podcast because a lot of people are a lot better than this than they think. Like it's very cool, man.
Yeah, it's super cool. And my favorite is when I'm doing a podcast with someone and like I'll go deep down and I'll ask about different things. And my favorite's when I'll ask about something that they kind of did but stopped doing. They're like, you made me want to I want to start doing that again. Like whether it be a YouTube video or whether it be their own podcast or something like that. Like it's just cool when through the podcast it sparks something and motivates them to start doing something else again.
At the end of the day, that's almost like more important than anything because you're making an impact in somebody's life. So to me, that's kind of like the drug that I got addicted on with podcasting because I didn't know what I'm doing when I started. You saw me. I was just like, I don't know. I just like talking to people. Let me just do that and see what happens. I like learning from people. It's like a networking tool, if you want to call it that. I'm meeting so many like really interesting people, but I don't have like I want to make X amount of money from this, or I want like like fame. Like I want to be the most famous. Well, no, I want to be bigger than Philip DeFrank. I never had like any of those. It was just like I just like talking to people. I like telling stories. I like hearing stories. And when I get these messages from people, it's like, man, like this motivated me to do this, or oh, this inspires me. It's like, this is so worth it. This is so cool. I never thought I could be that person.
Yeah, I think when I started, I think I was more so the opposite. Like, I think I wanted to find a way to make podcasting my job, and I wanted this to be a thing. Which I'm not saying I wouldn't take that now. That'd be awesome if I could make podcasting my full time job.
Yeah.
But I think more so as I've gone along the progression of hosting my own podcast and doing it, I think the aspirations of trying to make that my full time job have kind of gone down a little bit, and I enjoy it for what it is, and it's fun and it's a hobby. It's a hobby that takes up a lot of my time,
Yeah.
but I do really enjoy it. And if there is ever a potential for it to become a job, I'm not going to say no, but I'm not going to be absolutely like, my soul's not going to be crushed if
Right.
that never becomes like what the podcast becomes. I'm cool with what it is now, where I have a bit of a small, tight knit community that like to listen to it. And to your point, networking is probably the most valuable thing you can get out of doing your own podcast.
Yep. Yep. And that's why I recommend it to anybody. And not even like, you don't even have to have guests. Like, podcasting is so wild west. Like, you could do whatever. You could take your iPhone, download, I guess, like the Anchor app or something, and produce a podcast without even leaving your phone, and put that out and distribute that content if that's all you want to do. And you could talk about whatever niche subject. There is a community out there. You just got to find them, and they got to find you, and they'll ride with you.
That's just it. Like, it's so easy to start your own podcast today. Like, no one has an excuse not to.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. So easy.
It is. And we're going to look back at, I this is kind of like this belief I have is, I think we're going to look back at podcasting the way we look at websites. Like, it's just another way to peer into somebody's, like, what they're doing with their creative outlet. It's like a photographer sending you their portfolio or something. Hey, this is my podcast. This is what I'm interested in when I'm not doing my day job, or when I'm not, doing whatever it is that I'm doing. So podcasting, I heard there's like, I think they just hit 1 million, something like that.
Okay.
Podcasts on, like, actual active podcasts that are being downloaded, only 1 million. Like, at first I thought, oh, that's a pretty big number. Like, that's, if you want to look at it like competition, that's a lot of competition. But then you think about like what 1 million is, and that's nothing, man.
Mm-hmm.
Think about like YouTube. Like a while ago, like, everyone thought of YouTube as just cat videos and just like very random things on there. Now it's like everyone and their mom has to have a YouTube channel. So podcasting is the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's only going to continue to grow. And I think too, as we move more towards voice technology, I think podcasting is going to grow. And I think another aspect of podcasting that I love in terms of being a consumer is you can consume it while doing other tasks.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing for me, is like, I listen to podcasts when I walk to work, when I work out, when I walk home, when I do dishes, when like anything, I'm
Same here.
always listening, because you can do it and gain knowledge while just doing other mindless tasks.
That's such a powerful thing, and that's why I think the audio revolution is here. As much as I love video, I appreciate video, I can't just sit there for hours and just be laser focused on something like that. That's why I even have a hard time with movies these days. I'm like, come on, man, like, let's get to it. Like, I got shit to do. But like you said, like, I had a podcast on while I was doing dishes today, in the car, like on trips and on a plane, even at work. Like, that's where my podcasting kind of, it sparked in me, was, hey, I got is 8 hours and I'm putting stuff in an Excel spreadsheet. Why can't I listen to something and maybe get some entertainment or learn something while I'm doing that? And I don't know about you, but I prefer podcasts over music now, and unless I'm overly consumed with too many things that day. I don't know if you experience this, where I'm just like, I don't want nothing to do with the podcast right now. Like, it's just too much brain. But like, those are like pretty much the only times I listen to music now. It's just,
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same way for the most part.
Yeah.
Like, I can't really focus, like, for my work when I'm doing copywriting or different things like that at work, or if I'm writing emails for work stuff. I can't listen to a podcast and do it at the same time, because my brain's like split.
Same.
Then I'll listen to music. I'm still pretty big into music. Like, I have a Spotify playlist I put out every week. So I try to listen to new music as often as I can.
Oh, you put out every week?
Yeah, like, I think it has like 11 people follow it. It's
Sweet,
called
man.
Songs for Sunday. I've been doing it for probably like 2.5 years now.
Wow.
And it's literally just like, it's 50 songs. If I add 6 songs, I take 6 songs away, and it's just like a curation of all the new music that I'm finding.
Wow, you're the
Yeah.
opposite of me, man. I am so bad with that. Like, for me, music, I'll hear a friend play a song in the car or something, and I'm like, oh, this song kind of slaps. Like, what's it called? I'm like one of those. I don't do any research on my music. I suck at playlists. I'll make a playlist, go hard on it, abuse it, like murder it. Like I don't want to hear these songs after I've been through this playlist, and then never update it. So the constantly updating, that's power. I like that a lot. I might start doing that.
Yeah, so it's like a public playlist, and like I said, I think 11 people are subscribed to this playlist. But it's more so like for me than
Yeah.
anything, right? Like, it's just so I have somewhere where these are the 50 songs I'm currently vibing with the most right now, and as I find new songs, I'm just gonna keep cycling in and out. And so that playlist is public, and then I have so it's called Songs for Sunday.
Right.
Then I have a private playlist I'll probably make public at some point, but it's called Everything Since Sunday, and it's
Ah,
like 500 plus songs that I've had on the Songs for Sunday playlist that I've just cycled off of it.
right. So you still have them and you can capture
Hmm.
them later. Interesting, man. Like every time I meet you, every time I see you, I learn something new, man. Another like random thing that you're just
Yeah,
doing.
I don't think a lot of people know about that one. It's just kind of something I post about it maybe once every couple months, but
Yeah.
like literally like the most low key thing that's not a big deal.
Getting back to your podcast, My Social Life, for a second, you've had some really, really interesting guests on there. And like you've said, even yourself, with massive followings. Like, I forgot, was it Justin Odisho or someone? I listened
Yeah,
to that one
I had him
with,
on.
with the huge YouTube following. And I loved that podcast. Just listening to it was so chill. Your questions are so insightful. Like they actually make your guests take a second and like, oh wait, like it almost hits them in the face. Like, damn, like okay, what do I think about school, or like what do I think about like certain things? And I find that really interesting, man. That's a skill.
Thank you. That's cool to hear.
Was it always something that you had, or is this something you like crafted and worked on and got better at?
I think it's crafted for sure. I think it's like it's all in my prep work because I think I actually suck at having a conversation. Like I need my prep work. So I think that like it's definitely crafted. It was never a natural
I
thing.
disagree. You're doing it right now. You don't have any prep work in front of you,
No,
dude.
but it's easier because you're asking most of the
Fair
questions, whereas
enough.
I'm answering.
Fair.
But like I'm bad at just. I think I'm bad. Every single podcast I've done is super structured, so I've never done one without it. But I think I'm bad at with just being off the cuff. I don't think I could do it.
Interesting.
But and also my podcasts are narrative based, so I go
Right.
through their story from beginning to end. So I kind of lay that out on paper and everything.
Right.
So yeah, definitely a crafted skill.
Sorry. And that's one thing. Like when you showed me when we met and you showed me your research process, it's so mind blowing how much, like how structured it is. You got this Word document and it's pages of and bullet point formatted, like so like I'm so lazy. I have no but all that to say, that must really help you ingrain that in your head. The prep is already done. You've already basically done the podcast before you've even done it.
Yeah, there's times I'll ask a question that knowing what the answer is, but it's a setup to my next question. So
Ah,
sometimes I'll ask a question to give the guest context, not myself, because they need to know kind of what's going on, right? Because they haven't done the prep work I have. So if I start jumping into these topics that when they've never, they don't know who this person is, and I can't just start diving into these topics that the guest will be like, "What the hell?" So their story kind of gives the guest context, and we'll dive into different tangents as we go.
interesting.
So yeah.
Interesting. And so do you find that when you're asking these questions and someone gives you an answer that you weren't expecting, does that throw you off in any way, or like have you ever been just like, oh well, that's just wrong?
Not too much, and that's one thing I have worked on is trying to get better as like so I have it all structured and trying to work through that timeline that I have written out. But if they bring something up that I have later down on my page, is jumping to that and then coming back to where we were.
Ah,
Because it's just awkward for them to mention it and to me just brush it off like they didn't say anything and then to bring it up 20 minutes later when it's where I was ready to talk about it. But if they bring it up, like I'm trying to get better at jumping into that topic right away. Just the conversation flows more naturally.
absolutely. So it's structured, but you could call it audible.
Yeah.
You flow with it a bit more. So that's something I'd like to get a lot better at, man. And like researching my guests and like having those kinds of like almost Nardwar level like throw people off. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
how do you know that, bro? Like what's going on? But it's also not my thing. Like so, and we've talked about this before as well. It's like I kind of have my own style. Like I didn't prepare for this. If you looked at my notes, it's like make sure to ask about 1Q interview. You know,
Yeah.
I have nothing like other than my lightning round questions. I usually don't prepare, but there have been podcasts with that like I was a little bit more uncomfortable going into. It's like
Hmm.
topics that I'm just not as like I know nothing about women's pelvic floor health. Like I did as much research as I could into that before going into it, so I'm like I don't look like a complete idiot. So at least like my that was more for my listeners, not me. I don't care if I look like an idiot, but I want my like listeners to be like, man, like you didn't ask anything like legit. So I try to ask some decent questions, but for the most part, I just go, man. I just like it just flowing. But man, I wish I could play that chess where it's like I'm thinking those moves ahead because I feel like I could tighten up the conversations a lot more, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. And I think like it's funny because you say that, and I'm like, I wish I could be a little bit more free flowing in
Hmm.
mine. You know what I mean? So, and it's playing to your strengths too, right?
Yeah.
I feel like if you were to try and sit down at your computer for 2.5 hours to try and research a guest, you'd hate it.
Yeah.
And that was like a big rule for me, especially as I got more into the podcast and it became such a time commitment. Is if there was stuff I was doing on the podcast that I hated doing, I'd cut it right away.
Mm.
I used to do subtitles on all my social media clips, hated it, cut it. There's just different things where I'm just like if it's not fun for me anymore, I'm just gonna cut it and
Yeah.
stop doing it. And I feel like I feel like just in terms of you, like you'd probably hate the research, so it'd make the podcast less fun for you.
Oh
You know what
yeah,
I
I
mean?
hate a lot of things. I love podcasting. This part right here is what I love.
Yeah.
This is what I enjoy. This right here is so great, so fun. A lot of the other tasks are not as fun, but there are certain things like you almost have to categorize them as do I have to do this right now for it to be successful or do I not have to do this? The ones that fall into do I personally me I don't have to do it, I will outsource the shit out of it. So that's something that's my philosophy on things. But you're a little different. You do it all.
Hmm.
You do beginning to end, A to Z. It's all you. There's no other credits on on your podcast. How has that been challenging for you in terms of just the sheer time?
Yeah, I think it's just trying to find that time.
Mm.
That's been the biggest challenge. I have cut it down substantially since I started. So I always tell, I think when I started, it probably took me 24 hours from start to finish. Like not just 24 hours in a day, but like total time added together, like a
Wow.
full day to do an episode. Now, if you count my research and the podcast, maybe 8 hours max.
Wow.
But that's with sitting down with someone for 2 hours. That's with researching for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like I can burn through and edit in probably an hour and a half because I'll speed up the audio so I can get through it quicker. And then the social clips, depending, sometimes those will take an hour. And then I schedule everything, including all my social clips. That'll take me another hour. So I don't know if that adds up to 8, but it's around there.
Interesting.
Hmm.
What's your outreach like to your guests? How do you do it? What's your process for that?
A lot of just shooting my shot, DMing people, emailing people. What I've started to do is try to get guests to refer now. So I'm like if you know anybody that you think would want to do this podcast, like let me know. I'm always looking for new guests. That's something I've started doing a little bit more than I did at the beginning. But yeah, it's just a lot of like I have you can save posts on Instagram. I save them and I have a folder of like guests I should DM and I just save a photo off their
That's
account.
where I should start doing that.
I do the same thing on Twitter. I also have a note in my phone of guests that I can DM as well. So I probably have 100 people saved that I want to reach out to. And then I just send them an email, say, hey, what's up? This is my name's Jacob. This is my podcast. This is what it's about. And then I have a paragraph. It's not just copy paste. I have a paragraph that I use to contextualize to them. I want to have you on and talk about this, 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 and this. And it's stuff that's actually about them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's not just copy paste. And then it's just like I also all the content I make, I'll give to you to use if you want. So I try to provide that value for them for coming on my show. And then here, if you want to check out the podcast before you say anything, here's some links to check it out. Talk soon. And then
What a great formula.
yeah, so I just do that and what I've started to do now is what I want to start to try and do is send voice messages instead. So I'll email them the text obviously, but then send voice messages on Instagram
Interesting.
because I feel like the text just looks like, even though it's mostly copy paste, I try to contextualize it. I still think to them they see it and it feels kind of copy paste. So if I can send an audio message, that's not copy paste. You have to record that every single time. So I'm going to start trying to do that more. I've done it a couple times, but I want to keep doing it and send people voice messages. Plus, because they don't know what my message is about, right? It just pops up as like the audio wave. So they have to click on it to hear it. So maybe that'll see how that's gonna do. I'm gonna test that out from time to time. But
That's
yeah,
genius, dude. That is the 2020 version of sending lumpy mail, like you know, a lot of marketers or like people in like advertising or something or any business will send out mail to people with some little thing in it that makes the package actually like
okay.
kind of thick, so that you're always gonna open that package because you like what's inside, and then once you check what's inside, like then you can decide if you rock with it or not, other than just an envelope, which is a DM. And
Smart. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I've
so
never heard that
so
before.
so
That's
that's
cool.
powerful. Just sending because everyone's gonna want to know. Oh, what's this person saying to me? Like, is there beef? Like, is something going on? What's
Yeah.
this Jacob guy got to say? And then they hear that, and it's gonna stay in their brain a lot longer. And they heard your voice.
Exactly. So I tried to put the podcast voice on when I did
Yeah,
it. So
the
yeah,
podcast voice.
yeah,
I can't relate, dude. I don't know what that is. To me, I feel like I don't really have a podcast
yeah. That's
voice.
true. Yeah, you. I don't think you do. You're just the same. Which
Really,
is
it's interesting
maybe you
because
have a little bit of one, but
oh yeah, a little bit. Like there's always I'm trying to bring my energy a bit more up
mhm.
than when I'm just having like kicking back, having some beers or something, right? But yeah, no, that's very interesting. I never really thought about that. I definitely feel like I have a like social media voice though. If
That's
I'm doing
fair.
like an Instagram video or something, that shit stresses me out, man. I'm like, God, like what do I gotta okay, like, hey guys, like check this out, or
Yeah,
like that always felt weird to me. But it's like that's one thing I learned from Hayden, right? It's like just do it. No one cares. Just post
exactly. That's what you
it.
got. Just keep posting.
I love it, man. So this isn't the only podcast you have going on. You also have one Q interview. Talk to me about that. It's not really a podcast, but it is like
Yeah, I've kind of explained to people it's like micro podcasting
yeah.
almost is how I've kind of explained it. So basically, it was just I need to start putting out more content on LinkedIn, but the podcast clips don't do that well on LinkedIn. So I was trying to think what else I could do for content on LinkedIn. And then I had Buster share on my podcast for the second time. He's the founder of this basketball media company called Hoops Nation. And he used to do, I can't remember, it was not called 1Q interview, it was called something else. But he would just do, it was like the 30-second show or something, like 60-second show or something
Okay.
like that. And he did the same thing. He recorded a video of himself on his phone asking a question. He'd send it to someone. They'd send their answer back to him, and he'd edit them together and post it. And it was when I was preparing for my second podcast with him, I went and re-listened to the first one him and I did, and he said that he did this show on his Instagram. And he
Okay.
said that to me and just kind of clicked as I was like, I've never seen that done on LinkedIn. No, I'm just going to steal his idea and do that on LinkedIn. So it was all
Ah.
through Buster where the idea came from. And then I was like, it's just a good way for me to network with people on LinkedIn, because instead of just like trying to connect with people for no reason, hey, I'm doing this show. Do you want to connect? Like, I'm just going to send you one question. You film your answer. You send it back.
Ah.
I edit everything and I'll post it and tag you in it and stuff. And
Interesting.
so it's an easy way for me to network with people on LinkedIn
Right,
that then
right.
they'll comment on, they might share it, they might not, but it's super easy to do. It's quick and easy. It takes me 2 minutes to edit them. And then it's just content for my LinkedIn. So
What's your goal with connecting with people on LinkedIn?
I don't really have one right now.
Yeah.
I think it's just good. Like, I think LinkedIn's a good place where I want to try and grow my personal brand as like a marketer and in
Mm.
the business side,
Yeah.
and as well as my podcasting and stuff as well. So it's just good to try and connect and build those relationships. Like I'm trying to connect with other marketers around Ottawa and different stuff like that. So I don't really have a goal. I think just trying to grow my personal brand there and doing it through this 1Q interview, this micro podcasting, which maybe leads to them listening to my full podcast or maybe not, but it's just a good way for me to try and build my brand and just build connections, because relationships is everything.
Relationships is everything. That is very. That might be what I call this podcast. I think that might be it
Yeah,
right
I
there.
like it. I like that's the hard. I suck at titling my episodes.
Me too,
I'm
dude.
so bad at it.
Oh, sometimes I'll take like 10 minutes and just sit there like, what did we talk about?
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm the same way. I'm so bad at it. So
Yeah.
there's no like rhyme or reason to my how I title my episodes. Like I'm not very good at it.
No, but sometimes to me it's just like, I'll have everything else done, and it's just like naming this file like, okay, well, guess we talked about real estate.
Yeah,
Let's throw it on there, fuck it,
yeah.
whatever. But it's funny because we might like, I don't know about you, but for me, when you're producing so much every week, it kind of, you just get lost in it. It's hard to sometimes take a step back and look, damn, like I've already done all this, like, and this is there forever. Like we're always gonna look back and be like, oh yeah, had that conversation. No one could take this away from us. We're having this conversation. It's gonna be put out there, and like barring some catastrophic like failure of all my equipment, there's a record of this conversation, and like our like kids or grandkids or like whatever in the future can be like, yo, what were you doing when you were like in your 20s? Like, go on YouTube or like
Yeah.
go on Apple or this and that. So there's almost this like you want it to be as great as you can, but you're balancing that with I want to put out very consistently. I don't really have a point here, but what I'm trying to say is like it's kind of crazy how we like think about the title of something, and in the moment it can be pretty insignificant, but it's like making something in history, and it's like there it is.
Yeah.
And it's like if I titled this, relationships are powerful or whatever that was, it's like, yo, that's there forever, man. Like,
Yeah, I mean, like back to the question you said earlier, where you were saying like lessons I've learned from my podcast. I think not caring as much is a big one, and that thing where I said like I'm not focused on making things perfect and just good enough. Good enough is perfect
good
because
enough is perfect.
to
Yeah.
get something from good enough to perfect, it's like those 1% things that stress you out that only you'll notice, right? Like there might be like a sound you hear. Like I'll get my girlfriend to edit or not to edit, to listen to my stuff when I'm editing it, because I'm on like the second hour of trying to clean this audio and I can hear the background noise and I'm like, this sounds so bad. Can you listen to this? And she'll be like, I don't hear I don't hear anything. And so like you get in your own head and you like, so now I've just stopped worrying. Maybe there's some background noise. It's not the end of the world. Everyone like, no, I've never got a comment about, oh, there's a lot of background noise in your podcast.
Yeah.
I think I've done a pretty good job being able to clean it up,
Right.
but I think trying to make it absolutely perfect is just going to stress you out, and many people aren't even going to care or even notice. So there's
So
no
true.
point.
So true, man. And it goes back to kind of what we were talking about before this podcast. I've had episodes where things have gone wrong, and it bothers the shit out of me. Like it really gets under my skin when I'm putting things out that are subpar because of the kind of that perfectionism. But that's it's not like, and that's more that's so overwhelming, that feeling to be perfect or put something out that's great, that I didn't put it out, because I remind myself that when I'm at 1,000 episodes, am I gonna care that number 23 had like some hissing in the background, or that my friend who I sent it to try to clean it up couldn't get it to like where I wanted it to be, or I had to use my camera audio instead of like, it doesn't matter, man. You still put it out. You still, but it's hard. It's hard when you are when you're emotionally almost attached to, this is your baby. This is like, you want it to be as great as possible, but it's true. Good enough is perfect. I love that.
Yeah, that's something I've just started developed. That's a saying I've developed through doing the podcast for sure.
Yeah. What are some of your future plans with the podcast, with the podcasting space, or otherwise?
I don't know. I think I have to rebrand my podcast. I think not
Okay.
change the name, but the cover art's got to change. I just don't think it looks the most professional in my opinion. I started it, like I said, 2018. So my graphic design skills, they aren't great now. They definitely weren't great then. It's literally just a couple Polaroids, and then the font I used was dope at the time. But I don't know if you know the app. It's like the Stories app. What's it called? Unfold.
Okay, no, I haven't heard of
So
it.
it's like an app that a lot of people use to make their stories look sick. It's like templated stuff. And they have a cool Sharpie looking font in Unfold.
Okay.
And it's the same font that I have in my
Oh,
podcast.
no.
So everyone would probably assume that I just saw the Unfold font and I started using it in my podcast. But I had it before.
You were the OG, man.
I mean, I don't know when, it depends when Unfold started,
Yeah.
but before I ever heard of Unfold, I was using this font. So now it's just not, I just want to rebrand it. I'm not really on the cover, so I'd probably put myself on the cover.
Yeah.
It just says with Jacob Kelly on the bottom of it. So I'd want to probably put myself on the cover, maybe like looking at my phone or something, because it's about social media.
Right.
But I would need to rebrand it, and it's just trying to find the time to do that.
Man, that's the hard thing to do, man. And I know we've kind of talked about it already, but it's so hard with all these things. People don't understand how much goes into putting out a weekly podcast. And, from to cleaning up your little apartment, making sure the guests, like when they do come through, like are taken care of, everything's all good, they're all comfortable, recording it, transferring of files. That's like something I'm never going to post a story about like me backing up my files onto an external hard drive, or like the pain of sending files to your guests and stuff, and like, like I ran out of space. I'm like, just all these painful little things that you got to do. It takes up so much time. When are you going to find time to do all these things? Like, I don't know, man. Like, to me, I outsourced editing as soon as I could. That was one thing I had to, like, it was taking so much time out of my day, because mine is with the video component as well, and then chopping up the clips for Instagram. But those little details you talk about, like the font, are important, but also like I'm experimenting every day with a different one,
Mm-hmm.
on different clips and stuff, and like, oh, this one seems okay, or this one's weird, or like I might have my brother, who's my editor, move my logo into the shot, whereas other ones I'll just have it like just. I'm just throwing things up at the wall, and like, so you say that your graphic design skills have improved a bit, and this and that. Well, think about like 5 years from now, like it's just snowballing. Everything's
Mm-hmm.
just building on top of each other. All these experiences you've like downloaded and stuff, like no one could take that away from you. It's something to be really proud of, man.
Yeah, I think back to your point where you outsource editing and everything like that, and with people from the outside looking in at podcasting and be like, man, it takes a lot of time. I don't know if I can do this. At the end of the day, though, the amount of time it takes is up to you. I'm sure the audio quality of our conversation right now, untouched, isn't that bad.
No.
You could probably take it and upload it and be done in 10 minutes.
Yep.
But you want to have the video, you want to have the clips, you
Yeah.
want to make sure everything's perfect, and that's where the time comes in.
Yeah.
So, if, not just to you, not just to
Yeah.
myself as well. I know it depends how fancy you're trying to be, right? So
Yep.
you could, like I said, we talked about you could do it with your phone, and
Yeah.
that's it. Like you could literally record a podcast and upload it in 5 minutes if you're doing it from your phone and you don't really care too much about anything else. Like it takes a lot of time, but it doesn't have to. Like
It
that's
does
something
not have to.
I did. Like, should I just stop doing my clips? They get maybe 10 likes on Instagram. I post it over 700 times. My Instagram's growing, maybe 2 followers a week. Like it's nothing crazy. Like what's the value of me spending an hour trying to do these social clips versus I could use that hour somewhere else.
Right.
So it's just like it's all in what, let's say, whether how fancy you want to be with it, right?
100%, man. But you wouldn't know that if you hadn't tried it,
True.
and then pivot. You know what I'm saying? So that's like it's very powerful. And that's so true. For me, subtitles was another thing, and we talked about this when we first met. I think you recommended Headliner,
Yeah.
or some app like that, and I used it and I tried it on a clip, and yeah, I think it would get like 60% maybe of it right, and you would have to physically manually go in and change the rest of it. I'm like, this 30-second clip took me an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not
Not worth it.
sustainable. I can't do this, and I wanted to. I went full steam ahead and made like the subtitles for a bunch of clips, and I was like, it was like exhausting. I'm like, you had to at one point take a step back and look like, man, this is not sustainable.
No.
I gotta remove this activity.
Yeah, I think I did it for like the first 20 episodes, maybe 21. And then
Yeah.
after my trip to New York, I was like, no, I'm not doing it for these. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And I stopped doing them.
Let's talk about your trip to
New
New York a
York?
bit. That's a pretty epic story. I think the people would love to hear it.
Yeah. So, I mean, so Hayden and I, who we talked about earlier, booked a trip to New York. I told myself once I hit 15 podcast episodes, I could book a trip. Because at that time, I didn't have a good workflow for recording remote interviews. So I was limited to just Ottawa. So if I wanted to get somebody else, I had to physically be there. So I said, once I hit 15 episodes, I'll go to New York City. And I told Hayden about this. Hayden was like, yo, I'd love to go with you. If you actually do that, let me know. And then I was like, okay. And then one of Gary V's admins posted like, hey, Twitter, ask me anything. And I shot my shot and I was like, yo, I'm coming to New York once I hit 15 podcasts. Would you want to be on the podcast? And he said yes. And that once he said yes, I was like, okay, I have a confirmed guest. I'm going to do this.
Yes.
And then I told Hayden, I'm like, yeah, it's going to happen. Hayden's like, hey, let's go. So we like booked an Airbnb, and Hayden and I were like DMing people all day, every day. And like, I always give him a special shout out because he came on that trip, but he wasn't on the podcast. He was literally just there, just meeting the people, wanted to come for that experience. And he was like making sure when my cameras would stop during the interview, he'd restart them. And like, he'd make sure all the framing was good so I didn't have to worry about that. So he was just like a bro the entire trip. And he was just it was awesome having him there. And he probably booked more guests than I did, which is crazy. And yeah, it was just a dope trip. We recorded 10 podcasts in 6 days. We got inside VaynerMedia twice. We had a crazy experience with Buster Share, who told us to come up to his rooftop after we recorded the podcast. And we went up there and we were in Hudson Yards, which is like a fancy area of New York, I guess.
Okay.
And we got to go on top of his roof for probably like 30 something odd floors up there, like 37, I want to say, if that number's right, on his roof at sunset overlooking Manhattan. And it's just like, that's an experience like no more tourists don't get. but we did through the podcast and just some crazy experiences. We went away for 6 days and worked our asses off, which is crazy because I worked like 28 days in a row or something at that point, and then I went and worked 6 days up and down Manhattan, and it was just a crazy experience. Yeah, got into VaynerMedia, met a ton of cool people, and yeah, it was awesome.
That whole experience, like no one could take that away from you, and it probably provided so much fuel and like motivation, for lack of a better word, for you to like continue on.
It did and it didn't, right? Because New York was so epic and there was so much, and there was like 3 pods a day. Like there's a new podcast every day. And then I come back to Ottawa and that's not happening anymore.
Right.
So there was definitely a lull and lack. Like I didn't miss a week. I've only missed 1 week, and that was between my 3rd and my 4th episode. Other than that, I've hit every single week. There's been a new podcast.
Nice.
But there was like definitely a lack of motivation, like a lull for me, where I was like, oh, I'm not in New York anymore. I'm back in Ottawa.
It's like coming back from a vacation. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to VaynerMedia on Tuesday to record a podcast. I'm sitting in my apartment doing it. Like that's not as cool. But
Interesting.
I pushed through it. I found a good workflow to record remotely. It was actually it was a guy that used to do Gary Vee's podcast. His name's Seth Feingers. Recommended this program to me that I use to do my remote podcast now. So I'm able to expand my network that way.
Interesting.
Which kind of keeps things fresh. So sometimes it's in my apartment, sometimes it's not.
Right.
And I just kind of pushed through that lull. So it was definitely motivating being there, but there was a serious lull and like a lack of motivation when I came back.
That's an interesting take, man. And like, man, why do you think that is about Ottawa? Like, what is it about? And maybe it's not even just specific to this city, but what do you think it is about just being here and just not being elsewhere, where it's like the opportunities are just.
I don't think it's an Ottawa specific issue. I think travel just is always special whenever you're somewhere new, a new environment, you're having new thoughts, new experiences.
Yeah.
Also, there's just something special about New York specifically.
Yeah.
I'd never been there before.
Oh, really?
Ever. This
That
was
was
my
your
first
first time there? Okay.
Yeah. I loved it. There's just something in the air in that city where every single person is working towards something.
It's a hustle.
No one's in New York to chill out.
No.
So, and there's just something special about being there, and I really liked that environment. And like,
Interesting.
even like Hayden and I got caught in rush hour one time, and I was like, "This is cool." There's just people everywhere. Everyone's got a mission. Everyone's doing something. Like everyone's chasing a goal there, and there's something special about that.
I love that, man. That's a great story. That's why I love that story, man, so much.
It's so cool.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's like one of the highlight experiences, I bet.
For sure. Like, yeah, it's just so at the same time where it was unmotivating when I came home, it also like really did put into perspective why I'm doing this podcast and look at this crazy experience I got because of it. That would have never happened. Like if Hayden and I had gone to New York and just been like, yo, we want to meet for coffee and talk to you for 2 hours, they'd have been like, not a chance, man. Like this is, again, it's New York. They've got shit to do. But because we're documenting it and documenting the conversation to post later, everyone was so receptive and they wanted to do it. So I thought a cool thing about New York too is some people that we met there had big followings, but they were so humbled. And like I've always said, like I've been big dogged in people from Ottawa that have like 12,000 followers, right?
Yeah, I've seen that.
But I go to New York, and again, like I don't care that they like teach their own. But like when we recorded with Gary Vee's videographer Caleb, I remember after, this sticks with me still.
Yeah.
He took us back down the elevator, back down to let us out. And we went down. He was just like, "Hey guys, thank you so much. It's just so cool that you wanted to interview me. Like, this is awesome." Like, he was just so thankful and so stoked that we were willing to do that. And even that on its own, I thought it was cool. And we walked, so like we come down the elevator bay and we walk out the elevator bay and we turn right to go down. And he calls back to us. He's like, "Hey guys," and we turn, and he like, came running. He's like, "Seriously, thank you. This meant so much."
Oh
and then he turned around and went back up to his office, and I was like, this meant that much to this guy. Like that meant like it probably meant more to him than it did to us. And it meant a lot to us to be there.
Yeah.
So it was just cool that like, even though like in Ottawa, someone with 80,000 followers is probably a great, like that's a lot, but in New York, it's not a lot. And it just meant a lot to him that we were willing to talk to him. But it meant a lot to us that he was willing to talk to us. So I thought that was a cool thing where people in New York were actually super, super humble.
Yeah. I love that too, man. And to me, I experienced something similar when I got to meet Sharad of the Red Blacks, Sharad Baltimore. Super cool guy, super humble guy. I didn't know that when, like, if you just looked at the dude, you might be like, you might completely think different. Just if you're judging a book by the cover, this dude, long dreads, tatted up. I don't know, like, I don't know what he's like. Comes in here, he's like, "Bro, you're a superstar." That was the first thing he said to me. I'm like, "Bro, what?" It knocked me off balance. I mean, he's such a nice dude. Obviously has a very rough story and upbringing, and like has been through a lot of adversity, but he, like, getting to meet someone like that who's just so overwhelmingly positive and just feeds you energy and boosts you up and like, yo, Brody, you gonna be a superstar, you gonna be big. Like, man, thank you, man. Like, it brings you up. It really brings you up. And those kinds of people, they fuel you. They give you their, like, who you want to embody. Like, when you get your 80K, 100K, whatever followers one day, you're gonna always remember to give the little guy a chance, to be humble no matter what numbers you hit or how much is in your bank account or whatever, ego fulfilling things are out there. You're just I'm always remember, like the way Sharad treated me, I want to treat other people. Make them just feel like, hey man, you have value. Doesn't matter all the other bullshit. You're interviewing me, so thank you. Like, I love that, man. That's great.
Yeah, it was super cool.
That's awesome, man. Moving on a little bit, let's talk about what you do for work and some of the side hustles you might be into.
Yeah, so I mean, my job is I'm the digital coordinator for the Ottawa Red Blacks.
Yeah.
So I'm responsible for their social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I do quite a bit of the email communication, so like the marketing emails and stuff. I'll write a lot of those. And then I also do some website content for them as well. So I've been with OSEG, as you mentioned, is the ownership group of the company. I've been with them for over 2.5 years now, which is crazy. I started with them. I started first doing what I do now. I did it for the Ottawa 67, so the hockey team, and I started when I was 19 years old. So I've been there for almost 2.5 years now. Wow. Coming into my third year. I did 67s for 2 seasons, including last year. I traveled on the team during the playoffs. They set a OHL record. They won they swept the first 3 rounds. They ultimately lost, unfortunately, in the final round. And then I moved over to the Red Blacks for the last season. So I'm coming into my second season right now. And you mentioned side hustles. I have a couple like marketing clients and stuff on the side right now, but nothing too crazy. Yeah.
You have a lot of skill sets, man. Like, you got your hands in a million different pots, and I look up to you so much for that. Like, I have a hard time even balancing a few different things in my life. So that's like badass, man. You got the copywriting, you got the marketing talent, you got the podcast going on. So like, you're only gonna hit success. But my only thing to you is like, make sure you don't burn out, man. Yeah. Because there's only so many hours in the day, and it's tough to balance everything. And like, I don't know when you find time to do your laundry or go to the gym or spend time with your girlfriend or just unwind and watch a movie when you're doing all these things. It's very, very difficult. And one thing that I'm learning through this whole process and everything is that, and like, I know we talk about like balance a lot. I believe there's no such thing. I don't think there's a such thing as ever achieving complete balance in all these different pursuits. And this is because you can't. You have to give something up to get something else. And so whether that be sleep, whether that be hanging out with friends, social things, or whatever other things you like to do with your life, something has to give. So you're not going to ever achieve perfect balance, but if you could just try to find that perfect formula of harmony while keeping your sanity, man, just keep on hammering, bro.
I think I've done a decent job at that. Like, to your point there, so I do all that stuff. I go to the gym every single day. I sleep 7 to 8 hours a night. My girlfriend and I still find time to hang out, and I get everything done. I would say probably the area I'm lacking the most is my social life. Like, not my podcast, but my actual social life.
I think the social life is doing just fine.
Yeah. So I think, like, honestly, like, the joke now is, like, I think my biggest aspect of my social life is the podcast, my social life. That's where I get my most interaction because I'm just working all the time.
Yeah.
I try and do the coffee meetings every once in a while, but I feel like I don't get out and, like, hang out with people as much as I probably should. And that's probably the area where I'm the least balanced. But other than that, like, think I'm relatively balanced. There's no like crazy late nights for me. I'm pretty serious about trying to get to bed by 11:30, and I'm up at 6:30 to go to the gym before work and stuff.
That's solid, man.
Yeah,
man. I think then, like, in that case, you've actually got it. Knock on wood, like, figured out, bro. Yeah. But knowing you're gonna want to put even more on your plate, and something's gonna have to give.
For sure.
So always just keep that in mind, man. Like. But yeah, man, like, I've really enjoyed this podcast so far. If you can believe we're already at an hour.
That's crazy.
So, but you would believe that because you've done so many of these.
Yeah.
You know. One kind of last topic I really wanted to talk to you about before I let you go is social media. And I know we touched on it a little bit before, but What are some of your, favorite social media platforms, not just for you to use, but just on a like usability basis out there?
That's an interesting question. I'm almost kind of way as I'm interpreting that question, I almost want to run through each social and like
Go
how I
for it.
personally use them.
Yeah, yeah.
I think TikTok's great. I had a big TikTok kick like at the end of 2019. I've definitely slowed down on it. I haven't posted in a month and 2 months, maybe even at this point. I think it's cool. I think it has probably the strongest algorithm of any social network.
Yep.
I think it's the easiest one to go viral on right now.
I like their hashtags.
Yeah.
I like how they feed you the hashtag. It's like, here, this is what's blowing up.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one. I like TikTok. Twitter, I think, is really cool. I think Twitter's great for networking, and I think people will be the most accessible on Twitter. Like I found often, like I'll go to someone's Instagram and they have 200,000 Instagram followers, but 6,000 followers on Twitter, right? So they're less. So Twitter's a great place to network and good for for business and stuff. Like what people view LinkedIn for. If you're using LinkedIn, Twitter's also a very good platform for building relationships and connections.
Right.
LinkedIn, of course, as well, is another great platform to use in terms of like business to business. It's a great place to grow your personal brand, organic reach.
Organic reach.
On LinkedIn
That's
is
what I was
really
gonna
good right
say.
now.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to take advantage of to grow my brand. Like I think LinkedIn is the platform I'm probably paying the most attention to. Instagram, I use it mainly as a communication tool at this point. I think Instagram is super relevant from a cultural point. So I've stopped trying to be serious about posting every day or every couple days on Instagram. It was actually, I talked with Hayden Haynes, like I just post when I have something to say. There's no point in posting when I don't have anything to say.
Yeah.
So that really kind of clicked with me, and so now I'm not worried about posting every day on Instagram. Just like I'll make my Instagram my highlight reel in the key moments. Instagram stories, of course, can be that every day, that's super easy, that raw, because it goes away after 24 hours.
Yep.
But in terms of communication, everyone's on Instagram.
Right.
So I can't just not go on Instagram, especially because I do a lot of like podcast. Biz dev isn't the right word, but podcast biz dev through Instagram DMs and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's really important for that. So that's why I think I still use Instagram, is for that communication. YouTube, I think YouTube, if I could only, this is kind of after a podcast with Buster, he kind of, the way he framed it and the way that made sense to me is if I could only post on one platform is YouTube. But YouTube's just the hardest one to be consistent with, right? Because making a 5, 10, 50-minute video every week, twice a week, takes a lot of work versus 2 photos on Instagram isn't that hard.
Yeah.
But it's the most, if you can grow on YouTube, it's the hardest to grow, but if you can grow, that's where you have the most loyal following.
Yeah.
And it's the easiest platform to, once you've established that fan base, to cross-pollinate them to other socials.
That's true.
Like you don't see very often where someone will go like 300,000 on Instagram and then they'll be able to make all of them go subscribe to them on YouTube.
No,
But you'll
or
see, like,
Twitter or anything like
but you'll
that.
see like Logan Paul, he has millions of followers on Instagram, on TikTok. Like they go everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily see that from other social platforms.
Interesting.
So on YouTube, if you can build that following, you can grow platforms super easily. But it's
Right.
hard to do it in reverse.
So how would you, like, what would some of your recommendations for someone who wanted to go on YouTube from some of the people you've talked to and seen their platforms grow? What would some of your top recommendations be for them to get that following?
Like what should they care about if they're
What
going
should
on
they
YouTube?
do? What it should it be about consistency? Should it be about posting clickbaity videos that are gonna get like the views? Is it trying to get subscribers? Like what is it?
Yeah, so actually have done a substantial amount of research into YouTube. There's a guy I used to watch a lot of. I've fallen off. That's one of the things, again, I had to stop doing just in terms of timing. His name's Roberto Blake, and he had a playlist.
Love this guy.
Yeah, he's great. He had a playlist called How to Grow as a Small YouTuber. And I watched, and some of these videos are like 3-4 hours long live streams that he's ripped and posted in this playlist. I've watched probably 20 to 25 of them. I took notes the entire time. So when it comes to YouTube, the biggest 2 things, like this is simplifying it down, is click-through rate and watch time.
Okay.
So if you have a clickbaity video, that's not good, because yes, you're getting the clicks and the views, but YouTube cares how long you sit there and watch that video for.
Yeah.
So if someone clicks on your video and it's clickbait and they realize it's stupid and they bounce right away after 3 seconds, YouTube's going to take note of that, and they're going to stop showing people that video, because they go, people only watch this video for 3 seconds. I don't want
Right.
to show it to them. So they'll stop. And then, so you need,
Sorry to interrupt.
It's all good.
I thought Rick rolls right away.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so with that, then you need to create engaging content, whatever it is, that will keep people on that video for a long time. And then your click-through rate comes down to your title and your thumbnail. So you have to make sure that people are clicking on whatever it is that you're doing. So that's hard to, both of them, like there's no like do this and people will click and do this and people will watch your videos. You just have to test and experiment and see what's working. If you see one video gets a lot of click-through rates, look at that thumbnail, figure out how you can replicate that for future videos to see if that continues, if that trend stays.
I've seen some of Logan Paul's like their thumbnails, and they're these silly, like if I had to make a Logan Paul style thumbnail right now of this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be you making a funny face, outlined and blown up,
Mm-hmm.
huge, and then some like partition, and then my face doing some other crazy face,
Yeah.
and people are like, "Oh, what are these guys talking about?"
That's the emotion, the face, right? Because if you and I were just sitting there with like plain faces
Yeah,
looking
it's like,
bored, no one's gonna
who's
click
gonna
on that,
watch? Yeah.
right? So the most important two things are your click through rate and your average view duration. Subscribers don't even really matter. Like you can see people rank a YouTube video and they have like 13 subscribers.
Yes.
My interview with Just Dustin, who's
Yeah.
the biggest guest I've ever had on my podcast, has recently gotten picked up by the YouTube algorithm. I don't know why. I didn't change the tags, the description, the thumbnail, the title. It's all stayed the same. Probably had 100 views at the beginning of 2020. Had 3,000 by the end of January.
Wow.
Is sitting at over 20,000 views now.
Wow,
so it's got
bro.
17,000 views. But
Congrats, dude.
thank you. And I
That's
think
huge.
so. It's gotten picked up in the algorithm because it has an average view duration of an hour and a half.
Wow.
So a good average view duration on YouTube after watching those Roberto Blake videos is probably 5 to 7 minutes. Is solid. This is an hour and a half, an hour and 27 minutes.
Yeah.
So YouTube's pushing it to people and people are watching it. So YouTube's continually pushing it to people. So my biggest advice when it comes to YouTube, although I'm not the greatest test case, like I'm super lucky. I don't know why people are still watching this Just Dustin video, but they are. But from all the research I've done, the most important things when it comes to YouTube, it's not your tags, it's literally your title and your thumbnail that makes people interested. And then once they click on that video, you have to make sure they stay there and watch it for a long time. And if people are clicking on it and actually watch that video, YouTube's going to recommend it to other people.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you, has that resulted in more people subscribing?
I
all?
think so. I've got 20,000 views. Probably like 40 people have subscribed.
40 extra people.
Yeah. So I'm
that's
probably
still
around 60 and now I'm over 100.
that's still pretty good, man. It's hard to get 40. I've been doing this for 9 months now, consistently posting almost every week. Like I missed this last week, ironically.
Mm-hmm.
I was sick and stuff, as
Things
you know.
happen. Things
But
happen.
I think I just got like 180 subscribers. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like, I'm happy with that. Like that fires me up. Like that's 180 people actually signed on to YouTube,
Yeah.
which is I think the biggest ask. Like most people, because it's like people I know, right?
Yeah.
Most people won't want to even do that work right there, even though everyone has a Gmail or a
Mhm.
Google account. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's funny, man. Like I don't even think it really matters. It's just keep putting it out, just blindly just keep posting, because
Exactly. Like that video's doing well. My last two videos, last 2 weeks, my video that I put out today and the one from last week, they have no views, both of them.
damn.
So it's like, whatever, I'm going to keep posting. Like, it doesn't take me a long time to do it. So I stopped doing my clips on YouTube because that was the thing that I stopped enjoying. And again, if I'm not having fun with it, I'll stop doing it.
That was a big
So,
thing, man.
yeah.
Everyone told me is like you gotta chop your, what are we at, like over an hour now? You gotta chop those up to bite-sized little things. It's like, yeah, I get that, but I don't have the time to just
Mhm.
do that for every medium.
Yeah.
Because then I'd have to chop one up for IGTV, and then
Mhm.
make one for TikTok, and then one for LinkedIn, and then for Facebook, and this, that. And like, and some people will say use the same video. You can't. There are different dimensions. There's different, like,
Mhm.
things that actually do matter. Like, someone's going to look at your. Anyways, all that to say, like, you actually, it does matter what you pick, and enjoy, and understanding that being consistent is more important than just, following those views.
Exactly. Consistency is the most important thing. And
Yeah.
back to what we talked about earlier, if you're going to do anything, just pick whatever platform and focus on that one. Because it's going to be harder for you to try and grow 4 platforms at the same time than focusing on one and growing that.
100%, man. This has been a great convo, man. I feel like we could definitely go on for hours. Like, as you know this feeling. It's just like we could just keep going, keep talking about a million different things. But I think we should probably wrap it up. Is there anything I missed that you really wanted to talk about or bring up in the podcast?
I don't think so.
Okay, awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming out. But before that, we're going to do our lightning round. So I do just quick 5 questions. You know the spiel. And they don't have to be lightning. Like, just answer it.
Yeah, I used to call I have a similar thing called a rapid fire.
Yeah.
But my rapid fire questions are like deep, meaningful questions that
Yeah.
no one's gonna answer in like 2 seconds.
How could you expect people to give you like an answer for something like that? And my problem is sometimes I'll I'll ask follow-up questions and like,
Mhm.
oh well, like, can we go down this rabbit hole? Like, but anyways, what are 3 podcasts you listen to?
Oh, damn. 3 podcasts that I listen to. Can I look at my phone?
Yeah, yeah, go for
Okay,
it. Man.
and this is gonna. You might have to edit around this. And
No, 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 I
apologize
won't
for
edit
that.
shit. You're good, man.
But let me see. Let me look at my most listens to podcasts. Can I give you more than 3?
For sure, man.
Because I saw some of the average person subscribe to like 3 podcasts, but I think I'm subscribed to over 55.
Yeah, man.
This is so. Looking at it right now, Spit and Chicklets is one I listen to all the time.
That was a funny
Of course. Diary of a CEO, phenomenal podcast.
Never
It's
heard
by
of
this
it.
guy named Steve Bartlett. He is the CEO and founder of an agency called Social Chain. It's one of the biggest social media chains in the world. And basically, what it is he'll take his diary and he'll like read you points in his diary and elaborate as to why that's important. He does interviews as well. I don't enjoy those as much. Such a good podcast. Diary of a CEO.
Okay.
Another really good one is called the North Star Podcast. It's by this guy named David Perel.
Okay.
And
Oh, David Perel, he's a great writer,
a
right?
fantastic writer.
Yeah, I follow him on Twitter and I love his
Mhm.
content. I read his blog posts, but
Yeah.
I think he just started another podcast as well. And it's a lot
Maybe.
more bite-sized.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I want to listen to North Star.
Yeah, North Stars, and like you'll feel smarter every time you finish listening to that one. Like he's just so smart in the way that he can navigate. His conversations are so good.
I want to get him on my podcast.
Yeah, I asked him one time. He says he wasn't doing podcasts. This
Oh.
was about a year ago. He's like,
Okay.
I'm not. He was just on a podcast, and I was like, it was like one of his good friends. He's like, I'm not really doing podcasts right now,
Fair.
but maybe one day. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right. I listen to Impulsive, Logan Paul's podcast.
I watched that one
Yeah.
on YouTube.
See, I don't.
And I don't watch anything on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm not a YouTube consumer.
That's fair.
That's one I watch.
I listened to A Conversation With, which is Philip DeFranco's podcast. That's a
Okay.
good one. Another good one. It's episodic, so I'm done it now. But it's called Slow Burn, and they did a documentary series on Tupac and Biggie, and they had like people that moved with them back in the day on the podcast. So that one was super interesting because I'm big into like the Tupac and Biggie and that whole story. That was another important one. Gary Vee, obviously. Monster DC Sniper is one that I'm currently going through right now, which is about like, so apparently there was a guy in like Virginia in the States in 2002 that had like a legitimate sniper rifle and was like one shot, he would shoot random people and then he'd be gone and they couldn't find him. I'd never heard of this before. And it was like 2002, like it wasn't that long ago. And so it's like a whole they caught him eventually. Like but it's a whole documentary on that. Tim Ferriss is good.
I'm surprised that's not a Netflix series yet.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it's coming.
Tim Ferriss has got a good podcast.
Yeah, I like his.
Joe Rogan, depending on who the guest is, I'll listen to.
Yeah, those are long.
Yeah, they can be super long. Yeah. What else do I got on here? That's pretty much it. Of course, It's Not That Deep's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to find new podcasts, different things. I just recently started listening to the James Altucher show. I'm like 1 or 2 episodes into that one. It's kind of like a Tim Ferriss-esque show. That one I really enjoyed, but yeah, I listen to a ton of different podcasts. So if anyone
Dude,
has...
I'm blown away right now. How do you have that many? Like, I can barely focus on 2. And I don't know, for me, once I started making one, I listen to podcasts less.
Interesting.
It's hard for me because I'm too busy.
Is it a time thing?
It's a time thing. And so I will make time for it only when I'm doing other things like we talked about. But I'll never just sit there and listen to a podcast the way I used to.
Never. Oh, I've never done that ever.
Yeah, but like it's tough, man. Like how do you like how much space on your phone does that take up?
I have no idea.
That's what?
But I speed up my
55?
podcasts.
Oh, you speed them up. Are
Yeah.
you a 2x guy or a 1.5x?
No. 2.5 to 3.
Oh, you're crazy. Oh, you're nuts.
Yeah.
No, that's why.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, 'cause I can
I-
get through depending on like who the podcast is with. That is depending on how fast it goes. But depending on the podcast, I can get through an hour podcast in 20 minutes.
Has this made you talk faster?
Probably.
Because you talk fast.
I do talk fast.
I feel like I talk slow, and that's because I listen slow too.
Yeah.
I like it just normal speed. I
Yeah.
tried 1.5 once, and I was like, I don't know. I feel like I'm missing some stuff.
When I go from sped up to normal sounds like it's in slow motion. Like it's crazy. So
That's
yeah.
nuts.
That's
All
how
right,
I
man.
get through them all.
That's crazy. Okay, interesting. Next question is, what superhero do you think you'd be?
I've gotten Clark Kent before just because
Okay.
of my glasses, or Peter
Okay.
Parker, so Spider-Man, Superman.
Okay.
I don't know.
I
I'll-
could see the Spider-Man a bit. I could see the Spider-Man.
We'll go Spider-Man.
But then the glasses, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. This is why I
Yeah.
like to ask people. Cause
Yeah.
like for me, my answer, I just like to say Hulk.
Fair.
Your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Probably playing NHL.
Nice.
Like that is my one thing
Let's
where
throw out
like
some cello, eh?
I love it. Like
What
an
what
unhealthy amount.
year? Which like the most current
Most
one?
current one. Yeah.
I stopped playing after like NHL 13. Was it 13? What was the last good NHL game? 15? Yeah, man. Like I feel like they fell off after that.
I just love it so much. Like I've made like so you can do an expansion team. So I did an expansion team and I designed everything and like it's so
This
much
guy
fun.
just can't
Man.
get enough of the sports and
So much
the
fun.
podcasting and just
Yeah.
you love what you love, and I like that,
Yeah.
man. Next question is who's your biggest role model?
That's tough for me. I don't know.
Someone you look up to then, or someone like if you had to have like a vision board or something, this is someone I want to model.
I mean, obviously Gary Vee is probably a big one.
Yep.
Like he's just been super influential to me the last couple of years. So he's probably my default answer is
Sweet.
someone I look up to.
Awesome. The best advice you've ever received?
I don't know where I would have received this, or I've kind of just figured it out through myself. Like I always ask my guests this question, like best advice you've ever received, and I used to ask and from who,
Oh, nice.
but I can't remember anything. Like I not a clue. Like any advice I'm about to give you, no
Fair
idea
enough.
who or when it happened. But the advice I always default when this question comes up is just start.
Just start.
Whatever you're thinking about, you want to start a podcast, just start it. YouTube, just start it. You want to start a business, just start it.
Yeah.
Because by thinking about it and researching and trying to figure out how to do it, you're going to learn so much more by actually doing it and putting in the work to do it. Like I said, I started my podcast in July. I got a year at Christmas. I sat on it for that long trying to make sure I was ready and I knew what the show would be about and all this stuff. And I was still not prepared. It still took me 24 hours to do an episode when I started, right?
Yeah.
6 months of prep work and I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Just start because you'll learn so much more by doing.
Just jump off the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you learn how to swim.
Mm-hmm.
I love it, bro. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm sure we're going to have more podcasts in the future and just keep going with it. And I'm really excited to see where we're going to be a year, 2 years, 5, 10 years from now, because these are still the crude beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even though you're 70 something episodes in and I'm 31 now after this, we're just getting started. We're just scratching the surface. So very excited to see your growth. I'm glad to call you a friend and someone that I look up to. And thank you for coming on the podcast, bro.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here.
Awesome, man. Just remember, folks, it's not that deep. Thank you. Thanks for listening to another episode of the It's Not That Deep podcast. For access to exclusive articles and content, please head over to www.itsnotthatdeeppodcast.com. And to help me grow this thing to the next level, here's what I need you to do. Go ahead and subscribe to my podcast on all platforms, wherever you listen, and share with all your friends and family on all social media. And please leave a rating as well. Remember, it's not that deep.